that I intended for our webinar. So it turns out that since I have last used YouTube to run this webinar, they've done some significant updates to how it runs. And as a result, now I no longer know how to use YouTube to do a live webinar. So fortunately, Facebook have come to the party and Facebook are here with the function to be able to do your live webinars. So I'm just going to go quickly back over to, I can see Nicola, Rebecca, Robin, welcome along guys. Hi Nicola, oh, this is actually easier than the YouTube setup. Chrissy, wonderful. All right, well, you all obviously got my message. I'm just going to pop back over into the other page and make sure that nobody is there waiting to come over to the webinar. So yeah, like I said, this is the first time that I ran the challenge last time in April. And YouTube worked exactly the same as it always has, and this time it does not. So huge shout out to Facebook for having the functionality to pick up where YouTube has let me down. Although it's probably not YouTube's, probably more my fault. So no, there's no more comments over there in the box, so that's good. All right, there's about 6 or 7 of you. I won't wait for anyone else to join because we are already about 13 minutes late, which is, if any of you knew me in person, you'd know that's kind of story of my life. I tend to be a little bit late to everything. I think it's a sign of creative genius. That's what I tell myself. Cool. So as we go through the webinar, feel free to leave any comments, questions. Let me know if you've got anything that you want to ask. Just having a look. There's some comments in there now. Catherine, hello. Rebecca, hello. Cynthia, hello. So many people, hello. It's nice to have you guys on here after doing your homework. All right, I'll kick off straight away because we are already a little bit behind and I know you guys probably have stuff to do. But like I said, ask any questions as we go if you need them. I have my coffee because I need coffee and I have my water because I do a lot of talking. So please excuse me if I drink while we do the webinar. And if you've watched the video this morning, you'll see that my cat's actually featured in it, having a bit of a fight down in the corner. You can hear them, so they may feature that shoulder in their cat tree at some point too, if you're lucky. They like to be Facebook famous. So brief overview of me, because most of you probably know me and know Foley quite well by now. So I've been foaling for about 10 years, working with horses for about 15. It was a job that I fell into because I liked working with horses. And as it turns out, I'm much better suited to working finishing at 6 o'clock in the morning like you do with Foal Watch rather than starting at 4 o'clock in the morning like I was at the racetrack. So foaling very much suited my sleeping patterns, and the more I did it, the more I fell in love with it. To this day, I very clearly remember my first foal, and yeah, it's not something that I'll ever forget, and it really did start quite a love affair with me for foaling. Now, I started Foley probably about 3 years ago because for someone who is breeding their own mare, like a lot of you guys are, there's really not a huge amount of easily accessible information out there. So everything that you need to know is on Google. Everything that you could possibly want to know about foaling is out there. But in the same breath, everything you could ever possibly want to know about stock markets is out there, about learning Japanese, about everything. And sometimes the hard part is actually knowing what it is that you need to be looking for. So it doesn't matter how much information you have access to. If you don't know what you're looking for, it might as well not be there. So I started Foley to try and put some of that information together into like a package, really, a one-stop shop where people could go and get information that they needed to foal down their own mares. Because at the moment, I mean, I went to university and I studied an equine science degree. You've either kind of got to do that or you've got to hope that you come across someone that is willing to teach you, which is what I was lucky enough to do. Or like I said, you just get on Google and hope for the best and try not to give yourselves nightmares with all of the things that look like they can go wrong when you start Googling. So that was the reason that I created Foaled. It started off as an in-person course. It's now an online course. It's now this challenge. It's now a 5,000 fans strong Facebook page with a support group with over 1,100 people in it. So it's grown beyond what I could have imagined, and that's fantastic because what that does is that enables me to be able to help more people in foaling down their mares and to answer questions and things like that. So I'm very grateful that I've had this opportunity to be able to start Foaled and to be able to reach people like many of you guys in this group who perhaps would have felt a bit more on your own without the resources that I can supply. So I'm very grateful that I have that opportunity, and I do love doing these challenges for exactly that reason. I'm very passionate about foaling, and I'm stoked that you guys are along to learn a little bit. You all sound like you've got wonderful mares, so I wish you all the best with your foals. What we're going to do first is we're going to recap the 5 days of the challenge. So please feel free to, if you've got any questions, if something came up for you when you were doing the challenge, or there was a question that you wanted to ask that either you forgot to ask or I didn't answer, or there might even be something that comes into your head now just while you're listening to me talk, please feel free to ask those questions and I'll do my best to answer them for you. I'm just going to quickly check the other webinar page and make sure no one's there, which is good. It looks like there is 3 people logged in, but I'm not sure if they're actually there or whether they've just got their browsers open. If you guys do have your webinar page browser open, if you could just close it so that I know it's not you guys, that would be great. Cool. All right, so day 1, we talked about predicting your mare's foaling day. And like I said to you in the video, each mare really does have her own definition of normal. I actually had a mare who I believed was empty, that she had a phantom pregnancy, and the way that I was able to convince my boss to get her checked was that I went back on the New Zealand Thoroughbred Racing website and I looked at her past gestation lengths and I calculated what her average length had been previously. She was already 30 days over what her longest previous foaling had been. So that was sort of the ammunition I needed to say to them, look, I think you better get the vet to check because I don't think there's actually a foal in there. And sure enough, when the vet did check her, we found that she was just a very fat broodmare who had been living off all of the broodmare feed like she was feeding a foal, but she was actually just feeding herself. So that was a tool that we were able to use to help us gauge that situation. A lot of you have been able to get in contact with past breeders and things like that, but more than not, I think most of the people in our group for this challenge seem to have maiden mares. So I will talk a little bit about maiden mares. And it does come more into the monitoring side of things, but it is difficult when you're predicting their gestation because you don't know, you don't have any previous information to go off. So for that reason, I'll talk more about it in the monitoring section because the maiden signs, as I said to you, tend to be quite different than that of an experienced mare. So when we're looking at the history of a mare, what we do on the stud is for every mare that foals down on our farm, we have a record sheet and we record how many days gestation she was, what her due day was, how many days over. We record all her behaviours and things before foaling, so how long she walked, if she waxed, if she got down and rolled a lot, how difficult the foaling was, all those sorts of things. And so what that does is that means that next year when we have the same mare, because we often have mares coming back to us year after year, we can actually go and refer to that information and look and say, oh, well, we actually have it color coded on the board. So black is mares who normally go pretty close to their gestation, red is mares who go early, and blue is mares that tend to go a bit later. So that can really help you to form some idea of how things are going to go with your mare and what her idea of that normal gestation period is. Anything less than 320 days, or anything 320 days, is what we call premature. So that means that the foal is potentially more likely to have some like musculoskeletal issues. Sometimes they have trouble absorbing colostrum, and anything that's less than 300 days is likely to be inviable. Now, in humans, what we do is we, if we go over 9 months, we get induced because we don't want the baby to get too big. That's not how it works when we're foaling. So if a foal stays inside a mare for 12 months or over 12 months, it's because it needs all of that time to grow. So the last thing that we want to do is to go and be looking, oh, you're over your due date, let's induce you. And then we actually end up inducing a foal that isn't quite ready for the world and can be very unwell and not survive. So anything less than 300 days gestation tends not to survive anyway. And we never tend to induce unless we have a really strong medical reason for why we should do that, because foals just aren't designed to come out on 9 months or 11 months the way that human babies are. Day 1 was pretty straightforward. Obviously you'll use the calculator and things like that. Is there any questions on day 1 on sort of the calculating the due date of your mare? It's pretty basic. Don't take it as gospel. And the thing to say, a few people said, oh, my vet said that she's due on this date. I'm not a vet and I'm not trying to discredit your vet, but one thing that might be useful is to ask your vet what gestation period they've based that on. So a few of you, your vets seem to have given you longer gestation periods than what we calculated in here. So that's why I like to use a range, because then that lets me know that that's sort of the window when I should really be keeping a close eye on her. We don't have any questions, so we'll move on from monitoring your mare, and we will move on to day 2, which was choosing a foaling location. Most of you sounded like you were going to foal outside. If you're around, do you want to just flick me and leave a comment and let me know where you're from? I feel like there's quite a few Kiwis in the group. I think there was a couple of Australians. But obviously for us, being in slightly nicer climates than perhaps some of the Americans and the Canadians and things, we do have the option to foal our mares outdoors in a way that is a bit difficult if you're foaling in snow and things like that, like they often are in the States. So foaling outside is definitely my preference, and there's 3 reasons for that. So the first reason, like I said, is because it can be quite difficult for mares to exhibit their normal behaviours in a box. So if they want to get up and pace and things like that, I would prefer that they can do that in a paddock, and it makes it easier for me to observe those behaviours too. It can be quite dangerous if you foal a mare in a box, if she starts thrashing. Oh, we've got a few comments. Queensland, Australia, Victoria, Australia. Hi, Aussies, welcome over the ditch, cousins. Hang on, let's see what we got here. Screen brightness is just turning on. We're all about the tech gremlins today, I tell you. So where were we? Foaling down outside. Yeah, so it can be quite difficult foaling a mare in a box. I've had to do it in really terrible weather a couple of times. Ballarat, Australia, Christchurch, New Zealand. More Aussies than I expected, which is wonderful. Look at me, I'm all over the show this morning. So foaling mares in a box. When a mare rolls over in a box, which is quite common because mares can actually tell if the foal is positioned slightly incorrectly inside their uterus. Obviously they don't know in their head, but their body can sense that something's wrong. So it's very common for a mare to roll in order to try and move that foal. And if she's trying to do that in a box, it can be a little bit limiting in terms of the space that she has to do that. And it can also be difficult for you if you need to get out of the way. If she starts thrashing or rolling and you're in the way, then it can be hard to get out of the way of a box when there's only one door. So if we're in a paddock, it's a much sort of safer environment for us to get away. I've just realized that there's a little bit of a delay between the comments and the video. So just keep that in mind, that I am seeing your comments sort of slightly after I'm actually saying them and the video is broadcasting. So I'll just keep that in mind. And the other reason is that foaling makes a mess of a box. So that's not the end of the world, but when a mare's water breaks, it is a lot of water. So I remember asking my boss once, how do I know the difference between when she's peeing and when her water's breaking? And my boss told me that it was the difference between a hose and a bucket, and he was pretty much bang on the money. So the other thing to keep in mind there is that when a mare's water is breaking, when she won't adopt that peeing stance that we recognise, so lifting her tail and leaning forward to pee, they don't do that when they're breaking water. They'll often be walking around or standing still. And I don't know about you, but I've never seen a mare walking around while she's urinating. So generally if they're walking around and it's coming out, then that's an indicator that it's water as opposed to a mare that's urinating. So outside seems to be the preference. One thing that I did want to mention that some of you may have got in the video, but getting your mares used to having headlights flashing around at night time is actually quite a big deal, particularly if they're maiden mares or they're mares that aren't used to that. We find that on the farm that all the old girls know the drill. If you're out there and you're sticking your torch under their udder or under their legs to take a look at their udder in the middle of the night and things, particularly if you've got a strong torch that is quite obvious on the ground, it can be quite startling for the mares. So just make sure that you do keep in mind to give them the opportunity to get used to doing that. A lot of you have either some paddocks that are really close to your house so that you can use your house lights. Some of you can use your stable lights, but like I said, quad bike lights or car lights are always a great backup. And I would highly, highly recommend having a headlamp, because when you're foaling, your hands tend to be pretty tied up and doing other things. So if you don't have to worry about holding a torch, particularly if you're going to have to foal on your own, then that's really important as well. Were there any questions on where to foal your mare? In terms of boxing, we tend to foal our mares outside, and then we put our foals in the box for the evening, and then they get let outside the next day, provided that there's no issues. Now, if they had some conformational issues, so things like contracted tendons, relaxed tendons, which we cover in the course in a bit more detail, I won't go into too much here, but unless there's any problems with their legs, or the mare's having problems, we tend to put them outside the very next day. They stay in a small paddock with their mum for the first week, generally close to the house, so that we can keep an eye on them and make sure that everything's working as it should be. And then we move them into their own paddock, or their paddock with other horses in about sort of 7 or 8 days after birth. The other thing about having them in a box or a small yard, it doesn't have to be a box, but just a smaller space immediately after foaling, is that it can be much easier to keep an eye on them. So one of the big ones that that comes up here, and it's something if you'd told me how excited I would be getting about horse poo when I grew up, I would have laughed at you. But for people who aren't sure if their foal has passed its first poo, which is one of the important milestones that we need, it can be really hard to be combing through a big giant paddock looking for poo. So if you've got a smaller yard, then it's easier to do that. The mares also, they tend to stand up a bit easier in the boxes, and if you're there and you're trying to help the foal get on the suck and get a drink, the mare's got less space to sort of walk away from you from, and things like that as well. So we tend to put a feed in the box for her, just to try and calm her down and keep her still and help her settle and things like that. So we give them a feed, and then that also, you know, when she's standing still, that also gives the foal an opportunity to get in there and have a drink as well. So if I was foaling my own mares at home, lights would be really important. I would be foaling her outside, and I would have some form of yard that I would be able to put her in, so that I could keep a close eye on her for sort of those first, and the foal for those first 12 to 24 hours. Okay, I'm just going to see if there's any questions come up. Look like I'm doing product placement with my Contigo mug. They're very good though. All right, day 3 was monitoring your mare. So this is a bit more of one of the ones that required a little bit more thinking and a little bit more consideration, because there is quite a lot that you can do. When it comes to monitoring your mare, for me, the physical changes are some of the most important ones that you can be looking out for. Again, like I said, in maidens, they haven't really read the textbook, not that any mares have, but maidens tend to, and they can be all the way from one end of the spectrum to the other. So you can have maidens who can behave like they're going to foal and wax up for sort of 3 or 4 weeks before foaling, and then on the converse side, you can have maidens that do absolutely nothing. So like I said, the only 3 foals that I've ever missed at work have all been maidens who I've checked. They've been asleep, standing up in the paddock, and I've gone back an hour and a half later to a foal. So if you're checking them regularly, there's nothing that you can do about that. If she has it that quickly, then that's wonderful. It means that she didn't need you. And personally, I would rather that was the situation than having a mare that, you know, was having problems and I found her having problems and she did need me. So maidens can be a little bit difficult, and they do require keeping a very close eye on them for exactly that reason. Foaling alarms are definitely something that, I mean, obviously I stay up all night and I watch the mares, so I don't need a foaling alarm because I'm watching them. But if I had to actually go to work during the day rather than being up all night as my work watching them, I would definitely be getting a foaling alarm on them. A few of you I've seen talked about Foal app, which is relatively new on the market. So Foal app works with an old phone that goes into a pouch under the mare's head collar, and then it sends a notification to your phone, and also has the benefit of being able to turn on a camera so that you can see what she's doing, you know, within reason. If there's enough light, obviously if it's dark it's going to be a bit hard to see, but you can do that, and it sends a notification to your phone that she is foaling. And you just pay, after you buy the pouch, you just pay a weekly subscription for that. I think it's around $20 US a week or something like that. So that, for someone who's breeding a smaller number of mares, is a much more kind of financially viable option. Or if you're only planning on breeding your mare once or something like that, that's definitely the more financially friendly option. If you are foaling on a larger scale, then definitely something along the lines of, I would be using SmartFoal. I haven't used it myself yet because I haven't had a need to, but I've heard great things from people that use it. Not only does it tell you when your mare's lying down, but it also monitors her activity level and things as well. So you can see if she's pacing or restless and things like that. So SmartFoal is the way that I would be going. The ones I've used in the past, so if we get towards the end of the season and there's only 1 or 2 mares left, I might sort of nap in between checks and things like that, but I have an alarm on them as well, just in case. And we've always used Magic Breed or Foalguard or something along those lines. Now, someone did comment and say that Magic Breed are actually no longer operating, and they were concerned that their alarm wouldn't work because it was a Magic Breed alarm. That's not the case. So these alarms aren't linked to the provider at all. What it just means is that once it's broken, you won't be able to get replacement parts. You couldn't send it away for service or anything like that. But again, they're a little device that goes under a mare's head collar, and when she lies down or changes the orientation of her head, there's a level that adjusts in the alarm. And once it's, I think it's about 3 to 5 seconds, once it's been out of alignment for about 3 to 5 seconds, you get a notification sent to a very loud alarm box in your room, and you can go and check your mare and see if she's okay. Now, with all these alarms, obviously you are going to get some form of false alarms, because every time your mare lies down. Also, if you have trees in your paddock and your mare lifts her head up to have something to eat out of the trees, then that can also cause the alarm to go off as well. So alarms are important, but I always would use them in conjunction with as many other options as possible. So pH testing is another one. Up until I did the case study at the end of last year, I hadn't used pH strips myself because, again, I was watching the mares, so there was no need. If you are on any Facebook group that is related to foaling on the website, on the internet, you will very much see thousands of pictures of mare boobies and thousands of pictures of pH strips. If you are getting the pH strips, you can get them from, like, there's a few Aussies and Kiwis by the looks of it. So you can get them from places like Bunnings, if you've got a Mitre 10, somewhere like that, anywhere that does like outdoors gardening, spa pool shops, that sort of thing, because they are used for testing the pH of water. Please make sure that when you buy the strips, you buy the free chlorine ones. If you're buying them at Bunnings, I posted a picture. I think it was in reply to someone's comment, but I will post it into the group. It's a blue bottle, and it's got a yellow lid, and it's got a yellow line that goes around the label. There are some that have a red line around the label, and they are not as accurate, and they're not the ones that we prefer to use when it comes to mare. So just make mares. So please just make a note that if you are buying pH test strips, that you're getting the AquaCheck is the brand I use. You're getting the free chlorine ones, so that you can make sure that they are as accurate as possible. The other thing with pH testing I would recommend is to do both teats. So if any of you did go and look at the case study that I posted, you'll see that for sort of the last 4 or 5 days of her pregnancy, Teek's udder was quite different on both sides. One of them was pretty much bang on, expecting that she should foal right then and there, in the next sort of few hours. But the other one was quite a way off, and having not had much experience with pH strips, I wasn't sure what to expect in this situation. What I did find was that when her second teat caught up to being the same level as the first one, I think I tested her about 3 or 4 o'clock that afternoon, and we had a foal at 9 o'clock that night. So once both teats were at the same, then we had a foal. So it's important to remember to check both teats, because one might give you a slightly different impression than the other. So I would always act as though the one that is closest to foaling is the one that's going to happen, because you don't want to look at it and say, oh, well, this teat says she's going to foal tonight, but this one says she's still a few days away, and then end up with a foal tonight. But just try and keep an eye on both of them and understand that they may be a little bit misleading in terms of each side of her teats. It's just a question here. Any tips on anything extra you should check for an older maiden mare, and how old is too old for a maiden? So with maiden mares, statistically, horses can breed from sort of 2 or 3 years of age. 13 is the age at which their fertility does start to decline, and the risks associated with pregnancy start to increase. So that's exactly the same as, like, for human women at 30, they say that your risk of having babies with Down syndrome and issues and things is likely to increase, and it's going to be more difficult for you to get pregnant. I don't know about you, but I know a whole lot of women who are older than 30 who have successfully had really healthy children. So 13 is that similar sort of tipping point for horses. It's absolutely not to say that you can't breed them after 13 by any stretch. It just means that, it may be a little bit more difficult, and you do have to take that into consideration. Really, how old is too old for a maiden mare comes down to how well the condition that the mare is in, how well she holds her weight, things like that. If she's healthy, if she's well looked after, if she's in good condition, then there's absolutely no reason that even a mare in her early 20s couldn't successfully deliver a foal. I wouldn't be banging out foal after foal, so I wouldn't be breeding her every year if she was that age. But if you had, your own horse that you really wanted a foal from and she was sort of 20 or 21, if she's in good condition, there's absolutely no reason that she shouldn't be absolutely fine. Often with like sport horses and things like that, young thoroughbreds, they generally retired by the time they're 5 or 6, so it's easy to start breeding then. But for some big warm blood horses and things like that, you don't start them until they're 5 or 6. So they often have careers sort of into the 18, 19, even into their 20s. So we do end up with situations where, you've retired your really, really good eventing or dressage horse and you're wanting to breed at that stage. So I would be doing it under supervision of a vet, just because, like I said, it does tend to be a little bit more difficult to get them in foal if they're a maiden at that age. But really, as long as she's healthy, you can get a vet to do a reproductive assessment on them to actually see, how things are lined up in terms of how healthy she is and that sort of stuff, to see what the odds are of her being able to get in foal. Something that we talk about in the online foaling course as well, and the in-person course that I do, is the vulval conformation of a mare. So the shape of her vulva can dictate how easy or hard it is to get her in foal as well. If she has a vulva that's not the ideal shape or seal, then you do risk getting bacteria and feces and things like that into her reproductive tract, and that can make it difficult for her to get in foal as well. So have your vet check that, and have your vet check, her reproductive health, her general health, and her vulva. And there are some operations that vets can do to try and protect mares from the feces and things getting into their reproductive tract. It's called a Kaslik operation. So we do cover it in the course. Otherwise you can Google it. Just be prepared for some pictures. Okay. So monitoring mares, let's go back to that quickly. So if I was in sort of the last week of my foaling, obviously me as a person, I mean my mare, if I was in the last week of my mare's foaling, I would be checking her at minimum every 2 hours through the night. And that's just the sort of time frame that I'm comfortable with, because I know that I can identify generally any signs that she's going to be going into labour and stay up if I see them. And if on the off chance she does surprise me, then that's a good enough time frame that I'm comfortable that there won't be too many issues that I can't intervene in or call a vet for if I've checked her 2 hours ago. So 2 hours is sort of that time frame. On the farm, I have mares that I check sort of every half hour and things, but I'm awake, so that's not a problem. It's a bit different if you're trying to go to work the next day and you're up checking your mare every half hour. That's a little bit difficult. So behavioural changes we talked about too. Again, if you don't know the horses, it's quite difficult, but if you do know your horses and you do know what their behaviours are like, how your girls normally behave, it can be very obvious to you when mare starts to change that behaviour and sort of is either, like I said, doesn't want to hang around with her friends when previously she's been quite herd focused. She might be going off on her own a bit more. She might be all of a sudden really easy to catch when she used to be a real hard work. Sorry, choose my words right. When she used to be really hard work to catch. So all those little things are going to give you an indicator that perhaps things are changing. In terms of the udder changes, I would recommend taking photos of your mare's udder. And the reason for that is if you go back and have a look at Teek's case study, that's exactly what I did. If you are looking at your mare's udder every day, it can be quite difficult to notice small changes in the udder. So when you take photos, it's much easier to sort of compare and look back and say, oh, well, I didn't really think it had changed. But actually, when I look at this picture from last week, there is quite a noticeable difference. And what you're looking for is for the milk originally, or in the beginning, it will start filling up the udder. So the udder will fill, and then as she gets closer to foaling, the milk actually starts coming down into the teats. And so I'm going to do some beautiful pictures for you. So when an experienced mare is starting to fill up her udder will have quite sort of defined teats on it. And as she gets closer to foaling, that line becomes sort of more continuous with the teat as the teats start to swell out and sort of the milk flows down into them. And then you start to get those secretions of wax and things, ideally, as she gets closer to foaling, unless she's a maiden and she wants to be confusing. But generally, an experienced mare's wax is a pretty good sign that they're not more than a few days off. One thing I do want to mention with wax is that sometimes in some mares, wax can actually go to dripping milk. And if your mare is dripping milk, then you do risk her losing her colostrum before her foal is born. This is only if it happens on a large scale and she's actually squirting milk when she walks and it goes on for a few days. Normally, foals will actually lose the ability to absorb colostrum before the mare will run out of colostrum. So generally, if she's just got a couple of drips and she's got a bit of wax, then that's not a problem. But if she is continuously running milk for long periods before foaling, then that would be a situation where you would definitely be wanting to, I'm sort of jumping the gun here, but that would definitely be a situation where you'd want a colostrum tester so that you could make sure that she had adequate colostrum levels to have your foal healthy. I'll come back to colostrum testing shortly. I think that's all on the monitoring. So we did the alarms, we talked about the pH testing, the behavioural checks, the physical checks. And again, it's worth taking notes if you're planning on breeding your mare again, or if you think you might sell her to someone who might breed. It's worth taking notes on what behaviours she exhibited, what you noticed, so that next year when it comes around, you can say, oh, well, last year she waxed up for 3 days before foaling, and she walked for 1 day before foaling, and she rolled heaps in the hour before foaling. And so then you can look for those similar signs again as well. So I'm just going to have a drink and see if there's any questions that come through on monitoring, and we'll move on to the foaling kit. Doesn't look like there's anything there. I will keep an eye on it. So please, even if you're jumping ahead or if you think of a question you wanted to ask for something previously, please ask. Okay. So the foaling kit, this was definitely one like I thought it was. It tends to be one that people get quite engaged in. Everyone sort of, there's things that they have thought of, things that they like to have, things they don't like to have. One thing I always forget to put on the foaling kit list is rubber gloves, or a lot of people like the full sleeve vet gloves. And I guess the reason for that is that I've just been foaling so long that I know that I'm getting covered in every bodily fluid known to man. So I don't worry too much about the gloves. I make sure that I wash my hands with antiseptic wash before I put my hand inside the mare to check the presentation or the position of the foal. But I don't actually use gloves myself, but you are most welcome to, and if you are using gloves, it's probably worth having some lube of some form with you as well, so that you can just lubricate up those gloves a little bit so that they don't get stuck when you're trying to check the presentation of the mare or something like that. So my foaling kit, we talked about foaling straps. Now, someone did ask me in one of the comments, and I thought I would bring it up here with all of you in case you didn't see it. They asked me about where to fix the foaling straps, and this is actually a really important part to take into consideration. So when we fix the foaling straps onto the foal, what we want is we want the strap to loop over the cannon bone. If you fix the loop of the foaling strap below that, so over like the piston fetlock joint or by the hoof there, you significantly increase your chances of causing damage to your foal. So that's a very sensitive joint. It's a very weak joint when compared to the joint in the cannon and the knee. So if you're fixing it at that low point, I have been trying to collect videos for the foaling course from different people, and there have been some that have come through and they've got the straps there, and I just can't use them because that's not what I want to educate people to do. You are very likely to damage your foal if you do that. So the straps need to be fixed over the cannon bone, and then it's really important that you pull with the mare's contractions. It'll be very obvious when she's contracting. She sort of heaves and shakes and pushes. For any of you women who have been through labour, I'm sure you can probably relate. So it's important that we pull with her contractions, and also that we pull down towards her hocks. So when you think about it, the shape of the mare's reproductive tract kind of is shaped like that, and the foal is shaped like that as well, because you've got front legs, stomach, back legs. So it's very much in that shape. So if we're pulling a foal that's shaped in a reproductive tract like this, and we're trying to pull the foal out straight, it's not going to work. So you basically, what you do is you'll stretch the foal and open the foal in a way that it shouldn't be stretched. So it's really important that we pull with that natural motion and we pull down towards the mare's hocks. And the other thing is that I always stay on the foal side of the mare's legs. So wherever possible, I try and be behind the foal or in front of the foal. I don't want to be between the mare's legs and the foal, because that's where the chances are that you're going to get kicked by mistake if your mare starts moving or rolling or anything like that. So staying on the foal side, staying away from the mare's legs, and pulling down towards your hocks with those foaling straps. I'm getting a little bit blind here as the sun comes in, so I'm just going to drop my blinds. Please excuse me. There we go. Oh, it's probably too dark. Let's subtitle. You guys will see I'm very real. I'm not trying to put on a good face for the camera or anything like that. This is me. This is how I roll. So foaling kits, yeah, so that's the foaling straps. The colostrum tester is another really important one. So as I said, the proper name for a colostrum tester is actually a Brix refractometer. Someone asked me, is it the same one that they use for cows? Yes, it is. It's also used for making alcohol. So what a Brix refractometer does is it measures the amount of solids in a liquid, and then that gives you a reading. Now, ideally, we're looking for a reading of over 24 to be confident that we're getting good colostrum from our foal, for our foal. Anything over 18 is okay, but probably on the cusp. Anything less than 18, and I would be looking for some form of supplementation. So if your mare doesn't have suitable colostrum, or the foal doesn't drink it in time, you can end up in a pretty sticky situation where you have a foal with a low IgG count. And what that means is that the foal has a low immunity and it has less chance of being able to fight off bugs and things like that. A lot of insurance companies won't actually insure a foal until they've had an IgG done, because if the foal's IgG isn't high enough, then that's not a very good investment for them, because the foal's probably going to get sick. So foals actually only have a space of about 12 to 24 hours when they can absorb colostrum. So on a microscopic level, there are kind of holes in the gut of a foal, and that the holes in the gut allow for the colostral antibodies that are in the mare's milk to cross over directly into the foal's bloodstream. Now, at about somewhere between 12 to 24 hours, those holes in the foal's stomach actually close over, and the foal loses its ability to absorb colostrum. This is why it's really, really important, not only that the mare has good colostrum, but that the foal gets its first drinks as soon as possible and drinks as much as it can in those 12 hours. 2 hours is about the window where I like to see a foal start drinking. If it's not on the suck by about 3 hours, then what I do is I actually strip milk off the mare into a bottle, and I bottle feed the foal for that first mouthful or that first feed of colostrum, just so that I know that they've got some into their system, and that they can start building their immunity, because they're born with no immunity. They get it all from the mare's colostral antibodies. So this is where it's really difficult, and I do get a little bit frustrated when people say things like, oh, I went to bed at 7 o'clock last night and I woke up at 8 o'clock this morning and I had a foal. You know, that's all well and good, but what if that foal hadn't been able to drink during that time? What if that foal had got stuck in its bag like somebody's had here? Obviously these things are going to happen anyway, and sometimes mares surprise us, but you just need to make sure that you're taking all the steps that you practically can to make sure that you are there. Sometimes accidents happen anyway, and I don't begrudge people that, because I've been on the end of some pretty horrific things when it comes to foaling, and some pretty sad things myself. But you need to make sure that you're doing all you practically can to make sure that you're there, so that you can avoid things like, you know, foals drowning in bags or not having correct colostrum and things like that. So really important to get that colostrum reader. If you're a Kiwi, you can buy them off fishpond.co.nz for $50 or $60. You can maybe try and talk to a stud or someone around you if you know someone that can borrow one. But I would really highly, highly recommend getting one, because if the foal doesn't get those antibodies, then the only way to get them up is to do plasma transfers, basically, infusions, and they are ridiculously expensive. Depending on how low your foal is, you pay per unit. It takes a certain amount of plasma to bring it up to a certain level. I think it's X dollars per 100 markers on the reading, and it can be insanely expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars. So for me, the trade-off of having a colostrum reader, it's not really much of an equation. There is just a question. Is it easy to learn how to take the blood for the testing? I'm guessing we should learn from a vet. I've never taken bloods before. So with Nicola, I'm guessing that you're referring to testing the colostrum here. If I'm got the wrong end of the stick, please let me know and explain what it is that you're actually referring to. So when we test the colostrum, we're testing the mare's milk. So we just squirt some of her milk onto a little reader, and then it's either got a digital number or it's got like a scale that you can look through and you can see where it is on the scale and get the reading that way. If you are taking bloods for an IgG test, a vet does need to do that because we don't have the equipment to be able to test the IgG. So they need to take the bloods themselves and they need to send those blood tests away to get that IgG reading. So hopefully that answers your questions. If it doesn't, please let me know. But yeah, colostrum testers are really important for me. It's such an easy fix if you know that it's a problem, but it's a really expensive fix if you don't identify that it's a problem. Other places you can get colostrum, so you can get colostrum if you know a local stud. They might be happy to sell you some. We actually have a huge freezer of colostrum that we keep. And if you are foaling multiple mares or you're going to be foaling in subsequent seasons and you have a mare with really good colostrum, I'd recommend that you take some off her and store it in a container in the freezer. It can stay for a couple of years, and then that can be really good supplementation for another foal that perhaps doesn't, or another mare that that when she doesn't have adequate colostrum. So storing some is a really good idea. You can use cow's milk at a stretch, but it's not ideal, and it does need to go through a certain treatment process before they can use it, because the lactose and things in cow's milk and horse milk are very different, so you can't give cow's milk straight to a foal. Goat colostrum is another option as well. So goat milk and cow's milk are a lot more similar. I don't know if you've seen, but there's a video that does the rounds on Facebook of an orphan foal drinking off a nanny goat standing on a hay bale. So foals can drink goat's colostrum, and you can also buy colostrum supplement. You can buy like an online powder. I've never used it, so I can't say yes, no, maybe. But if my foal had low colostrum and I had no other options, then I'd definitely be looking into that. And the last thing is to talk to your vets or anyone like that to see if they have any stores that they would be willing to sell you as well. But that's really important because you want to give that foal the best chance you can. And like I said, it's got no immunity until it gets those colostral antibodies off the mare. So we talked about, someone mentioned that I said you need a scalpel in your foaling kit, and they said, I'm not sure what this is for. I'm hoping you'll cover it tomorrow. I'm not sure if that person's on or not, but what we use a scalpel for is two things. Sometimes, and this should never happen on any farm, and it should definitely never happen when you know your own mares, but sometimes what you can find is that a mare's actually still had a Caslick operation in place. So that's where, like I talked about with the feces getting into her vulva and the bacteria, the two sides of the vulva are actually stitched together to prevent that nasty stuff from getting in there. If that's the case, then that does need to be opened before foaling time. So we would use a scalpel to do that if we needed, but the main thing that I have them for is what we call a red bag foaling. So red bag is similar but not the same as placenta previa in humans. What happens in a red bag foaling, in a normal foaling, there's a weak part of the placenta called the cervical star, and that bursts open, the placenta opens up, and then the foal comes out in its white bag or its amniotic sac, and it's delivered normally. Sometimes the placenta actually starts to separate from the walls of the mare's uterus before it's burst open and before the foal can be delivered. Now, what the problem here is that the foal is getting all its oxygen from the mare through the umbilical cord, and the umbilical cord gets it from the placenta, which gets it from being attached to the mare. So if all of a sudden the placenta is no longer attached to the mare, it's not getting any new oxygen, so there's no oxygen going to the foal. And if the foal's not out of the mare and the foal's not breathing, then the foal's not able to get any oxygen from the air either. So you're at very real risk of your foal suffocating, and you've got a very small window to work in. Often you don't know how long the placenta has been detached for. So if you do have a red bag foaling, it's really important to get in there as quickly as possible. A red bag foaling, you'll see that a velvety red surface will appear at the opening of the mare's vulva instead of the white bag, and she won't have broken water before that because the water is still all contained inside the placenta. So if you identify that, you need to use your scalpel to cut that red bag open. It's very obvious if there's people talk about you can get like uterine prolapses and things like that. Any organ or intestine or anything like that that's coming out that shouldn't be will be more of a blue-purple colour and will tend to have a very smooth surface, whereas the surface of a red bag is very obvious. It looks like red velvet. It's bright red, and yeah, it's got like a velvety appearance to it rather than a smooth, more organ appearance. So you're going to cut that open with your scalpel. you don't know where your foal is, so your foal could be pushed right up against where it is that you're going to cut with the scalpel. So what I tend to do is just to poke the end of the scalpel gently into the red bag, and then often once there's a hole in it, the pressure that is being created from the mare pushing the foal is enough to burst the placenta open, the waters come gushing out, and generally the foal in the white bag follows quite quickly behind it. Now, my personal preference is to interfere as minimally as possible when it comes to foaling. I don't like to get in and pull foals out. I'd rather let the mare do it. Red bag foalings are the exception to this. So in the case of a red bag foaling, I get in and I pull that foal out straight away because I don't know how long it's been without oxygen. This is a situation where you may need an oxygen resuscitator, but alternatively, if you don't have one or you don't have a foal resuscitator or oxygen, you can just give the foal CPR. So when we give a foal CPR, we cover one nostril and we breathe into the other nostril. In the foaling bun, there is a how to give CPR to a foal guide in there. And we're going to try and, sometimes the foal will be breathing still, but sometimes it will need just a little bit of a kickstart because it hasn't been getting sufficient oxygen. A good way to check is to peel back the foal's lip and check the colour of the mucosa underneath. So ideally that should be a nice healthy pink colour, and if it's more of a blue, purple, then you know that perhaps the foal's had a little bit of oxygen deprivation. You're going to want to get oxygen into that foal as quickly as you can. So that's what we use a scalpel for. That's not a problem. I mean, I would call a vet once I dealt with it because you may need the vet there to check over your foal, but generally by the time you've identified that it's a red bag foaling and rung a vet, by the time the vet got there, it will probably be too late. So that's not one where you would normally wait for the vet. That's one where you would jump in yourself, which is why it's so important to have that scalpel in the foaling kit, because speed is really important when it comes to a red bag foaling. What else goes in my foaling kit? Enemas was another one that we talked about quite a bit. So enemas are foals born with a gut full of poo, basically, because it's been getting nutrients and things from the mare. And that poo is really hard and it's quite difficult for the foal to pass. It's called the meconium. All mammals have it. What we do is we give the foal an enema in the rectum, and then what that does is it lubricates that poo, so it just makes it a little bit easier for the foal to pass it out. Now, you can buy a product called Fleet, which you can buy in a chemist. It's for humans. I know it's for humans because I've seen the beautiful picture on the back of it that shows you how to use it. And we use half a bottle of Fleet for a thoroughbred-sized foal. So when we use the Fleet, what we do is it's got a nozzle on it about that long. I insert about that much of it into the foal's rectum very gently because it is really soft tissue inside the rectum. So we insert that gently, and then we squeeze gently on the bottle until about half the bottle is gone, and then we take off the lid and we disinfect it and clean it. We use the other half of the bottle for another foal, or for that same foal if, say, we were an hour and a half down the track and the foal hadn't passed that poo, was still straining, then I would give them another enema to encourage that along. So that's what the enema is for. Selenium, we give selenium to our mares here in New Zealand when they're born, because most of our soils are selenium deficient. And we've spoken with vets, and 2 mils is the amount that we give our foals. That's enough to give them a bit of a boost if they need it, but it's not enough to cause toxicity otherwise. If you have only 1 or 2 mares, then it would probably be worthwhile actually testing your mare and seeing what her selenium was like. But unfortunately, with hundreds of mares coming through the farm, that's not always a viable option for us. What else do we have in there? The purple spray. Oh, so the umbilical cord. Someone asked me what we use to tie off our umbilical cord. I don't actually tie the umbilical cord off. Generally what I try and do is I try and keep the foal plugged in or connected to the umbilical cord as long as possible, just to try and reduce the bleeding. And obviously as it switches from getting oxygen from the mare to oxygen from the ear, then it's good to have both of those going for a while if we can. There's a question there, would you need a whole bottle for a heavy breed foal, or would they need a little more? I would probably give them a little more, but I mean, the thing is, an enema, I'm assuming you're talking about enemas. Enemas aren't toxic by any stretch. So what you can do is you could give it half a bottle and see how it goes. Often that's enough to get things moving. Some foals do their first poo before they even stand up. And then, if in half an hour or so, the foal's still straining and it hasn't happened, you can give it a little bit more. I can give enemas I'll give them every half hour to hour up to about the 3 or 4 hour mark, and then if the foal hasn't pooed by that point, then that's when I would be calling a vet. So it's not like a heavily prescribed thing, and like I said, it's not toxic. You just don't want to overload the foal, so better to do it in little bits more often than to be going squirting a whole bottle when there may not be room for all that in there, because like I said, it is designed for a human. Bearing in mind a thoroughbred foal weighs around 50 kilos, so if you wanted to work it out based on what your average heavy horse foal weighs, then you could do that too. Excuse me. Where were we? On umbilical cord. So yeah, I try and keep the foal plugged in for as long as possible and get that oxygen and that blood passing. Sometimes the foal will come flying out, particularly if you've got a small foal or an experienced mare. She'll give it one big push and it'll come flying out and you'll lose the umbilical cord straight away. If this happens, I just use my thumb and forefinger to clamp the umbilical cord. So I get it in under the foal's belly and I clamp it. And it normally takes about 5 minutes before the bleeding stops. And then once the bleeding has stopped, we just spray the area with the purple or the blue spray. Some people iodine dip the navel, same sort of thing, but I find it much easier to lift the foal's leg up and spray it than I do to try and dip the foal's umbilicus in iodine. So we use the purple spray for that. Was there anything else in my foal kit? The headlamp, obviously, so that I can see what I'm doing. Was there anything else in the foal kit that anyone had questions about? Anything that people wanted to ask about that I hadn't put in the kit or anything like that? Please feel free to let me know. No, that's cool. All right, we will move on. Cool. So day 5 was contingency plans. So backup plans, looking at what can go right, what can go wrong. Ideally, you're going to either be able to be there yourself when your mare foals and there's going to be no problems or anything, and away you go, happy, no one's the wiser. Unfortunately, that's not always the way that things go, and sometimes we can have issues with foaling, either because the foal's too big to get out on its own and we need to assist it. Sometimes we need a vet, things like that, or sometimes it happens when you're at work and there's just no way that you can get away. So in these situations, it's really important to have a list of people who you're going to contact in that situation. So if you can't get hold of your regular vet, like I said, sometimes if you're in an area that only has one vet, one equine vet, or if you're in an area that has a lot of studs that might be using your vet, then it's worth having some other contacts of who you might be able to get in touch with. And please make sure you look up the after hours number. I can't stress that enough, because it may be different than the number that you would normally call them on during the day as well. So thinking about, just putting people on standby. If you've got a neighbour that knows a bit about foaling, just saying to your neighbour, hey, was hoping that you could come along, and if I need a hand, can I give you a call so you can come and help me pull my foal out and things like that. And then, like I said, just making sure that they're programmed into your phone and that you know who you're going to be calling if you do need any assistance. So probably some of you may not have looked at the homework for today yet, and that is fine. But I will be over there looking at the homework in the group today and things as well, so no rush on that. Cool. Any questions on anything that we've covered during the course? And during the challenge, should I say. Just going to wait if any questions come up. Now, I talked before about showing you through the course and things like that, but potentially, given that I'm using Facebook now and not the wonderful YouTube that I was using, what I might have to do is to end this video and start a new one, just so that I can share my screen with you. Doesn't look like there's any questions. If there are any questions that I miss, I'll pop back and check them shortly. Now I'm just going to show you, so I'll end this video and we'll start a new one in the group as well. And I will take you through sort of the course and give you guys the discount code for buying the online course at half price, or less than half price. And then I will also be doing the draw for someone to win the 6-month membership to the Foaling Barn website. So hang around for that if you would like. I would like to see you all over there for that. It doesn't look like there's any questions coming through, so I'll just end this video and hopefully you'll all pop onto the new ones. And then once I'm done with this, I'm going to go and figure out how to use YouTube to do it, because these tech gremlins are going to be the death of me, I am sure. Right, I'll see you guys in the next video in a moment. Okay, hopefully you're all seeing this. This is my beautiful screen inception. If any of you are jumping in, let me know that you are here. Otherwise, I will just crack on. I can see Nicola joined. Oh, look, everyone can see who joined 10,000 times on my screen. So I'll move off another screen so that you guys aren't looking at that, because that's not ideal. Now, hi Nicola, hi Rebecca. Thank you for popping over. Honestly, this used to work so well. I used to just be able to click a button and it would switch between my webcam and my screen, but this time not so lucky. So let's go and take a look at the Intro to Foaling online course and see what you get in there. So this is what the inside of the course looks like. So you come in, you've got a welcome. There's a welcome video that talks you through what's in the course. And then this is what you get here. So you've got access to the course. And you also have your foaling planner. So the course has got 12 modules. They're the same 12 modules that I deliver on the in-person course. And each module has a video that goes with it. So a video with a voiceover and the PowerPoint slides. Health and safety, that I won't bore you too much with that one. So we go through the biology of foaling, caring for your mare, preparing for foaling. So this module here, preparing for foaling, this is what we've done in the challenge, is actually a large component of this module for preparing for foaling that you guys can do. So a lot of what we've been doing over the last week actually comes out of this specific module here. So the videos are anywhere from sort of, I think some of them are 15 minutes right through to 45 minutes or an hour. So this one, for example, we look at stage 1 labor. So this one's an 18-minute video. The beauty about these videos is that you can watch them whenever you like. So you can actually watch them while you're out in the paddock. That's me, will turn me off. So you can actually look at these while you're out in the paddock, actually foaling your mare. If there's something that you can't remember, you can jump in. So it just goes through, it takes you through all the slides, the role of the attendant in stage 1 labor. We look at some of the signs of foaling, some of the behaviors, obviously a special section on maidens, as you can realize. So we go through there and look at all the different parts of stage 1 labor. We've got stage 2 and 3 labor, obviously. So stage 2 is when the foal's actually being delivered. So up to this point, we cover normal foalings. And then once we go into the module 8 here, we look at some of the problems that we can encounter at foaling time. So one of them obviously being red bag foalings that I've talked to you guys about. And then all the other foalings that we can have that can come from, that can result in incorrect positioning of the foals and things. So we go through, and I've got some beautiful diagrams of some unfortunate positions that foals can get themselves into, and then which ones you can manage yourselves, when to call a vet, things like that, how to identify what's going on. We then look at the post-foaling time in the mare. So we go through and look at, you know, her normal post-foaling behaviours, checking placentas, things like that, what milestones she needs to reach, what normal postpartum looks like, and then obviously if we have any problems, how to deal with those. The same with the foal. So we go through and look at what normal signs in the foal look like, and then some of the common issues that we can encounter in foals and how to deal with those issues as well. I talked before about us keeping a colostrum store. So this is what it looks like here. This is our colostrum store that we have at the stud so that we can supplement feed our other foals and things. There is a module on managing orphans. Again, not a situation we want to have to deal with, but if we do end up with an orphan, we want to know how to manage them. And then module 12 talks about some of the issues that we're going to encounter potentially in the first 2 weeks of the foal's life, and what to look for. So do a little bit on worming and vaccination. I don't particularly like talking about that because people get worked up about it, but there's my recommendations there. Diarrhea, which is a common issue in foals, newborn foals, in those first 2 weeks. Umbilical hernias, angular limb deformities, so when their legs are different positions and things like that. So that's all in there. So all up, there's I think it's between 4 and 4.5 hours of modules that you can look at there. Each module also has its own lesson downloads that comes with it, which is just a copy of a PDF of all the slides that come in the module, so that you can actually print those off. So this is all the slides that are in the modules that we just looked through, except my internet doesn't want to download them. There we go. So you get a copy of this, so you get all the slides so that you can download all of those. That's a red bag folding, so that's what I told you about. It's very obvious, it's very red, very velvety. So that's what we look at there. And then all the, like I said, all the lovely positions that our foals can get themselves into, and how to fix those different situations as well. Okay. So also over there we have, if we just go back one, this is something that wasn't previously included in the course at this level, but I have decided to include it because I think it's really useful to you guys, and that is the foaling planner. So this is a 66-page workbook that you guys can get with the course as well. All the worksheets that you got as part of the foaling challenge are actually part of the planner. So it's a bit of information. There's a risk assessment for any of you that run a farm and want a foaling risk assessment. So where you can record all the mare's breeding details and things, some of which we've done, looking after your pregnant mare, vaccination and worming schedules. This is some of the stuff you guys will be familiar with. So foaling history notes, picking a location, that's all stuff we've done, monitoring your mare, pH testing, foaling kits, again, all stuff you guys are familiar with, but just a bit more detail. And then conducting daily checks. There's some pictures and examples of different mares developing as they move closer to foaling. A sheet where you can record any behavioural changes, and then just short recaps of what happens in each of the stages of labour, places to record your observations. So we go through your record sheet, so you can record all the details about your foaling, anything you, we do this for every foal that's born on our farm. And then the golden rule of foaling, which I talk about in quite a lot of detail. Managing orphans, feeding schedules, all sorts of things in there. So that's something that you get as well, and that comes as part of the online course too. I'm just going to pop back over, see if there's any questions. We've got a whole lot of hellos, hellos, hellos. Hi, welcome along. No questions. This is good. We will go to my next thing. I'm so excited to show you guys this. So the only people that have seen inside this are the people that came to my Cambridge in-person course last weekend. Now, the reason that the foaling barn was started was that it just provides a slightly different way of delivering content. It provides for interaction, and it means that I can add new content all the time, because I'm sort of always coming up with ideas of things that I want to create. So the foaling barn is a monthly membership site. The course is a one-off purchase. And so we have all sorts of lovely things in here. You'll recognize this one, the 5-day foaling challenge. So this is what you'll find once I take the foaling challenge down, the website actually disappears, and all the videos and PDFs and things go away as well. Now, I've decided to move all of that content over into the 5-day foaling challenge section of the membership site so that you can look at that anytime. I've got a large range of industry experts lined up that I'm going to be doing interviews with, and those interviews will come into here as well. So just things like, you know, what would their recommendations be for people in foaling? What's their best thing that they would never leave their home without for their foaling kit? You know, what tips and tricks would they have? Things like that. I'll also be doing Q&A, so as we have questions coming through, and there are monthly live calls, which will be very similar to this Facebook Live that we're doing here. They'll be inside a closed group, and you guys will be able to come along and ask questions and do live calls, and I'll have a topic for each month's live call, and then they will all come into here as well. So I'll open some of these and show you what's in here. Case studies, at the moment you will have all seen Teek's case study, which is for free, available on my website. Now what I'm going to be doing is that all case studies going forward, Teek's one will remain free forever, but all case studies going forward will come into here, so you'll be able to follow on with the mares there. There's different how-to videos that I'll be adding to, so there's some content in each section, but each section will be getting more and more stuff added to it. So this is a video tutorial on how to tie up mares' placentas, because if you've ever tried to do that, you'll know that they're slippery as nobody's business. We have some libraries down here. So I have a foaling video library, we have a link library, and we have a photo library, again, that will be added to all the time. there. So the video library is broken down into the 3 stages of labour and then post-foaling videos. So you'll be able to click into the different stages. Some of them have commentary, some of them are my foalings, some of them are other kind people who have submitted their videos to be included on this website, which is very kind of them. So you'll see there's plenty of videos that you can see here, different mares in stage 3 labour. And like I said, adding sort of more videos and things to that all of the time. There is also a link library where we break down into different sections. So this has got useful sort of links to different things, different components, information about drenching from different companies, good articles that I think might be useful. There's information on orphans, good online articles. If you've ever heard of dummy foals, you may have heard of the Madigan squeeze. So there's some useful foaling videos around how to do that squeeze, videos on pH testing the mares. There's the day calculator that you guys have used, links to the different foaling alarms, the Brix refractometers. So every time I find something that's useful, you'll see down here under orphans, we've got the foster foal services. Anytime I find something that's useful, I pop that in here. We've also got a huge photo library, which I'm adding to all sorts of, sorry, there's some gross pictures, but foals with giant warts on their head. All sorts of different things that you can just sort of look through and look at some pictures. Sorry, I'm going to show you quite a gross picture, so you might just want to close your eyes for a moment if you're not interested. So this here, this is a prolapse at foaling time. So you'll see this is the foal's head here, and this is a prolapsed organ of some form. I'm not sure exactly which one it was. But you can see that that's quite different than this red texture, this velvety red surface here that comes with a red bag foaling. So this is the same mare. She actually had a prolapse and a red bag foaling, and that's what you can see there. I think that's the webinar page that doesn't work. Right. A little bit sad about that. So that's the library. We do have some great downloads as well. So there's a tips and tricks section, interesting recounts. So at the moment, like I said, there's only sort of 1 or 2 things in each. Some of them I haven't quite got to yet. So product reviews, that will be reviews on different foaling alarms, foal apps, things like that, any products that I have used that, and yeah, I will endeavour to review products that you guys want to see as well. So here we've got some tips on preventing retained placentas, how to get milk from mares if you're struggling to get milk off them. So that's in the tips and tricks. We have interesting foaling recounts. So at the moment, this is probably the worst foaling that I've ever experienced in my life. It's a little bit graphic, so be warned, but that is in there to sort of give you some idea of some of the different interesting cases that you can come across. This is a foaling glossary, so all the different words that you might likely come over at foaling time, you can look them up. So you can just use the Control F function, and you could look up red bag. Oh, I haven't even put it in there. That's awkward, isn't it? So you can look stage 1. See stage 1 labour, and that comes up everywhere that it is. So you can look for that. So you can use that function. I better go and put red bags in there. That's awkward. Huh? And then you can download that as a PDF as well. The guides and flowchart section. This is one of the most popular sections. So what we have here is a stage 1 and 2 troubleshooting flowchart. So I'd ask you questions, so you can have that in your foaling kit and go through it and look at, you know, has your mare been trying for more than 5 minutes? Yes, no, this is what you should do. We've got our CPR guide in there, a 5 or 6 page guide for managing red bags, a list of foaling milestones and things that you can print off and keep in your foaling kit. And I do have a raft of resources which I'm going to be designing and adding to that as well. Okay. And then down the bottom is the members section. So in here you can ask a question or request a training, and then because I like foals, I've created a stall of fame as well. So in here you can just pop in a question, any training that you'd like to see, any suggestions for our live calls, anything like that. And then the stall of fame, you'll be able to feature your own foal if you do wish, with a story about them or your mare and your foaling. So this is my first foal that I ever foaled. His name was Westy. For those of you that know Outrageous Fortune, I was watching Outrageous Fortune when he was born. So this is just a little bit about him and a photo gallery. So for any members, you'll be able to send in pictures and a story about your foal and get them featured in the Stall of Fame as well, which is pretty cute. So I'm definitely planning on adding more to it, but you've got all that in there at the moment. And the beauty of you guys doing the challenge and being some of the first ones through it is that once this launches properly, it will be $12 per month. I'm offering it to you guys for $8 per month, and as long as you keep your membership current, that's all you'll ever pay. So it'll never go up, even if it goes up down the track, which it probably will. The more content I add to it, the price will go up. But no matter how much it goes up, if you guys join at that price point, you'll always be able to access the Folding Barn for $8 per month, and that includes everything that will ever be added to it as well. So it's a pretty good deal. You also get the ability, like I said at the bottom there, even if you don't want to ask a question to do a training, you can just send me a message and I will endeavour to answer you as well. I am also going to be looking at the idea of introducing like a one-on-one call component with it, so that you can sort of, each month that you're a member, you'll earn minutes or credits that you can, or questions, Facebook questions, so that you can message me and we can talk about your questions and things as well. So that's in the Folding Barn. That's been quite a bit of work, and I'm pretty stoked to have it up and running and functioning now. Now, in terms of, let's check there's no questions. Cool. No, that's wonderful. I'm just going to have to leave you guys like this. I'm sorry, with this beautiful screen that you can see, just so that I can see the questions to your answers. The answers to my question. We are going to do the giveaway, which is exciting. There's only a very small number of people online, so you all have a very good chance of winning the giveaway. Let's find a piece of paper that I need to do it. Okay, so if you can all just let me know that you can hear me and that you are ready to do the giveaway and that you are there, and let me know that you want to win yourself a 6-month membership into that Folding Barn site. Just let me know if you can hear me. There is a bit of a delay, like I said, between the voice and the picture, so I'll just wait for a couple of moments. Yes, yes. Got a couple of yeses. I can hear you. Good luck. Yes, yes. Excellent. All right. Wonderful. So what I'm going to do, and bear in mind that there, like I said, there is a disconnect between the volume and the, between the sound and the picture. So I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on this, and if I get it wrong, I'm very sorry. Please let me know and I will go back and I can check. What I'm going to do is I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 30. I'm going to write it on a page. And when I say go, you guys will start typing in numbers, and the first person to guess that number will be the person that wins that 6-month membership to the Folding Barn website. So I'm going to write my number down now, and I've written it down on paper so that I can hold it up and you guys can see that I'm not cheating. Oh, you can't actually see that after all because I haven't got the screen turned around. See, this is why I need YouTube. Anyway, all right, I have my number written down, and I will let you know who gets it. So if we are all ready, and go. Now I just awkwardly sit here waiting for the numbers to come through while there's a delay in the time lapse. Oh, we got it. That didn't take long at all. Man, you guys are good. Congratulations, Nicola. The number was 24. Far out. I can't believe how quickly you guys got that. I'm just going to go back and check and make sure that she was the first person to get it. Yep, Nicola with number 24 there. Congratulations, Nicola. After the Catherine, you got 24, but it was after Nicola, I'm afraid. So Nicola, just send me a message after this, and we can get that all sorted out for you, and we'll get you that 6-month membership sorted as well. Congratulations. Oh, that was almost an anticlimax. Normally it lasts for ages. Maybe I should have picked a bigger number range so that I could have made it go on longer. All that build up and all nothing. No, that's fine. Well done, Nicola. Congratulations. So that is that little bit done too quickly, but that's all right. Now, the last thing is to just give you guys your discount code for the online course. So the discount code, because I'm very original like that, and I'm going to pop it down in the comments as well. The discount code is August Challenge. I know, how did I come up with that, right? I'm just commenting on it there. So I'm commenting with the name of, with the code. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to click on Buy Now, and then you'll have to enter that code after you've clicked on Buy Now. Now, in about 5 minutes, once I finish this live feed, actually I can do it now if you like, so that I can show you guys what it looks like. You're just going to have to go and look in the back, see what I do in the back of my website. I won't be a moment. I'm just going to enable it so that you guys can go along and you can purchase the challenge. You can purchase the course and the membership site if you want to. Now, if you purchase, I do have a bit of a bonus. So if you purchase within the first 48 hours after this webinar goes down, so it's 12:30 now. So if you purchase in the next 48 hours, I will be giving away a 1 hour free call with you guys. So with each person that purchases, and you can either do that on Skype or you can do it on the phone. And you can break it down into even 15-minute blocks if you wanted to. So if you had some questions and you wanted to Skype and ask your questions, you'll get an hour's sort of free chat credit, basically, that we can talk about your MEA, talk about your specific situation and anything like that as well. So if that's something that that suits you or something that you would like, that's not something that you can buy at this stage. Like I said, it's something I might consider adding to the membership site in time, but at the moment it's not something that you can buy, so that is the only way to get that. So I'm going to enable all of this for you so that you guys can go along and see. And the other thing that I've done is that, because I do know that sometimes people can't afford to fork out that money in a lump sum for the course, I've actually done a payment plan with that as well, so that over the course of 4 weeks you can just pay $25 for each of those 4 weeks, and then you can purchase. So you get access to the course straight away, but it's like, what is it now? Everyone's got Afterpay and things like that. You can just do $25 per week, and then that makes it a little bit easier for you to afford. So now the challenge page that you guys have all been doing your challenge on, if you go to the bottom of that page, you should be able to see links, and I'm just on it now for you. You should be able to see links to purchase either your access to the membership site or into the online course as well. So it's just got a recap of what's included in each of those. And like I said, here's the one-time payment. So you'll need to enter that discount code of August Challenge. And here is the weekly payment section. And then you also have the $8 per month membership site access. So that's just there. So that's the link that you've got, that you've all been doing. There's a challenge that you've been doing over the 5 days. That's all still there, but now at the bottom you can go down and have a look at that as well. Cool. So I'm just going to pop that link in here, and there we go. I just left a comment there with the challenge code and those things. Did anyone else have any questions that you wanted to ask me about anything we've covered over the 5-day challenge, about anything that's in the course or the membership site? Any questions about their MEA or anything like that before we finished up? Like I said, you're still going to have probably another 4 or 5 days to do your homework. I'm still going to be going in and commenting on all the homework. This video will be available for people to come back and view as well. So if there is stuff in it that you wanted to look at or get covered. One thing actually I will just talk you over quickly that I saw in my slides that I forgot to cover is the golden rule of foaling. So I do have a blog post on this, and it's something that has been very useful to a lot of people, and that's how to know when you should be calling a vet. So in a normal foaling, like the time between when her water breaks and when the foal's delivered should be no more than 30 minutes. If it is longer than 30 minutes, then you potentially have a problem and you'd want to call a vet. And then the other part of the rule, so it's called the 5:30 rule. So that's the 30 part. If your mare's been more than 30 minutes since her water broke, you might want to call a vet. And the 5 part is to do with if your mare has been pushing hard for more than 5 minutes with no progress, then you may have a problem. Now, mares will sort of, when they first start trying to foal, they'll lie on their side and they'll be like, oh, I want it to fall out, like, oh, I'm pushing. And they're not really convincing anyone. So in that respect, that's not really pushing. But if you can see that they're genuinely pushing and they're shaking and they're trying to get their foal out and it's not progressing, if they do that for more than 5 minutes, then that is when I would be calling a vet. As someone who has done a lot of foaling, I would be double checking to make sure that the foal was correctly positioned. But if you're not confident doing that, then that's sort of the time frames that I would be using to gauge whether I needed to call a vet or not. So that's the 5:30 rule. If you do call a vet, the most important thing you can do is to keep your mare walking. So you need to get her up and keep her walking so that she doesn't lie down and keep jamming that foal into the wrong position, because that makes it harder for the vet to move it a bit later on. Okay, so that's my golden rule of foaling. That was something I was supposed to cover in the first video I did, when you could actually see my face and not just my countless computer screens. But that is, yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. And those are really good time frames in terms of gauging when you might or might not need the vet. Well, I haven't seen any questions come through, so I might leave it at that. Thank you guys very much for joining me. It's been wonderful to have you here for sharing your Saturday morning with me. If you're watching this on replay, I am still happy to talk to you. Tag me in a post, tag me in your homework. If you've got any questions or anything, please let me know. That August challenge code is only valid for 2 days. So that's got a 48-hour window on it as well. So that discount price will go away after that 48 hours, as will that bonus of that 1 hour of call credit with me to discuss your mare and foal. So the code will be available to be entered till then, and then after that the course will go back up to full price. Okay, so any questions, any technical difficulties? Not that I can imagine that after the day we've had today by any stretch. Thank you for putting up with my tech issues with my YouTube not playing ball. And like I said, I'll hopefully see you all over in the group a bit more. I will still be there checking out your homework and doing things like that. Any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thank you very much, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday afternoon. It's a beautiful day here, and I hope it's just as lovely where you are. Nicola, don't forget to message me about setting up that 6-month free trial for the membership site. And all the best, guys. I'll see you in the group, and I look forward to hopefully still seeing some more of your homework and things coming through over the next couple of days as well. Okay, we'll be in touch. Thanks, guys. Bye.